Politico Politica. Politics for everyone.
Welcome back to Politico Politica with me, your host, Isabella Akinseye. It's now time for our Politics and More segment. So this is a segment where you get to share with us your political journey. So when did your romance with politics start?
Quite recently, actually. After my time as a deputy governor at the central bank, I spent 5 years in that role. I became a professor in the United States, teaching international business and economic policy. Now, being a professor gave me now the distance and the freedom to look at Nigeria from a much more independent standpoint rather than being part of an institution. And I began to see how bad the situation in Nigeria has become, the increasing poverty, and the failure of governance, especially from a government that we had very high hopes for in 2015 when they came into office. This disappointment about the failure of the recycled old politicians led me to decide, plus of course a lot of pressure from young people, especially from the northern part of the country. A lot of young people, you can see my personal assistant is from Yobe State. He was one of many people, young northerners, who were asking me to really run for the presidency of this country. And so I considered it very carefully and I decided, look, why not? It is time Nigeria was led by a competent, technocratically competent vision. It is time Nigeria was led by somebody who is properly educated. It's time Nigeria was led by someone who's globally exposed. It's time Nigeria is led by somebody who has a real plan for the economy and who understands how the economy should be managed.
So now let's move to party politics. Sure. The Young Progressives Party, YPP.
Yes.
What about their ideologies sits with your value system?
Absolutely. I joined the YPP. First of all, when I announced that I was running for president, I deliberately did not announce my political party. It was part of my strategy because I wanted to build, I knew that I had a bit of a brand as a personality that is known as a technocrat in Nigeria in the economic sphere, that is known as somebody who's had an experience in international diplomacy. And so I wanted to build that brand into a potent political brand of an alternative to the old order. And so I refrained from announcing membership of a party. What this meant was that many parties were courting me to align myself with them and be their candidate. So,
any of the major political parties, APC, PDP?
Of course. I mean, they were courting me to come into them, but in the case of the APC and the PDP, they would never have made me the presidential candidate because both of them practice political apartheid, zoning. So they were mooting the possibility of being the vice president. I wasn't running for vice president, I was running for president. So I didn't want to go and play a second fiddle because my vision is my vision and you cannot trust anybody else to execute that vision. And if you're under that person's authority, why must the person execute your vision? And if you're qualified, as I am, as we see in Nigeria, a number of times the vice presidents are more qualified than the presidents. I didn't want to be part of that, trajectory. So I decided eventually so I made a decision that, of course, I'm going to join a new political party because you cannot be a new wine in old wineskin and hope to be effective. So there was no question for me of joining the APC or the PDP. I also knew the implications of that decision, that the road would be much harder because the people have been intimidated, held captive by these two parties for many years. So breaking through was not necessarily going to be an easy thing, but I could sense that the people were tired of these two parties, but they were just waiting to see whether there was somebody around whom they can gather to force them out. So people are tired of the recycled politicians, but do they necessarily have the courage to vote them out? This was what I felt my candidacy would test. So eventually I decided to join the YPP. I joined the YPP because the YPP is an ideologically driven group of young men and women. They are progressive, which is to say, we want a better society that is more egalitarian, a society that puts the citizen, enthrones the citizen as the sole focus of governance, That's what in YPP we are looking at. We don't believe in the politics of greed. We believe in service to the people. So we're more of a societal transformation-oriented party. And so that's why I joined the YPP. And so far, so good. From nowhere politically a year ago, the YPP and my candidacy is now the third force in Nigerian politics, the alternative, or the third most, I would say at this point, perhaps popular party after those two.
So speaking about the political third force, do you think Nigerians are ready for the political third force as it is now, which is so many parties, or do you think Nigerians are waiting for the political third force to come together and present one candidate, one party, and really stand up to the major political parties?
But you know, that is a matter of political dynamics. It's not a must that must happen. It's a democracy. You can't force people to come together if, for whatever reasons, right or wrong, they don't want to come together. For example, some people may be motivated more by the idea of being an also ran for president. I ran for president, it's on my CV, but they know they have no real chance of winning. While you would say that that is not right, but because they're free as citizens, you cannot force them into a coalition. You know, some people feel that because they are young, that is what being president requires. Being young is very good, but it's not enough. You must be young and experienced and competent enough to be president of a big country like Nigeria. And that's the space where someone like me, you know, occupies. I'm a young person in the context of Nigerian politics, but I'm a very experienced person with a track record that can be verified nationally and internationally, and that is very relevant to what being a president of Nigeria requires, which is the ability to build a nation, the ability to manage Nigeria's economy, the ability to manage Nigeria's foreign affairs. And building a nation means, of course, things like establishing, in my own vision, establishing a national ambition and a national philosophy that will make Nigeria a real nation rather than just a country that it is today. I think that nation building requires things like my commitment to constitutional restructuring of Nigeria. It requires effective national security. It requires working with women as equal partners. It requires working with the youth as leaders of today, not just of tomorrow.
And you have a chance to speak more about your plans and your vision for Nigeria on our next segment, which is our Project Nigeria segment, but still on the politics and more segment. The political third force, do you think a lot of them are entering 2019 to test the waters and come back, regroup, and come back stronger in 2023? Or do you think a lot of them believe that they can actually win?
I really don't know. Some of them believe they can win. Some of them know they cannot win, but they're driven by some passion and commitment to the country, and they want to make a statement, you know, so they want to help to change the narrative, you know. And then there are people who just have it on their paper as a CV. So it's a group of...
What about the people that are broker of politics? So they go in to come third so that they can give their votes to the first or the second, and then on themselves, they abrogate power to themselves as a decider.
That's also part of political strategy. I mean, there may be people who have that type of strategy. For me, for example, and the YPP, we're in this to win. We plan to win the elections in February. We have a strategy to do so. We've taken ourselves from nowhere to third place right now. After the two big parties, we are moving to overtake the two of them and beat them at the ballot box on February 16. Don't forget, a lot of people will say, is this possible? Yes, it is. It is possible if all the people in Nigeria who feel that Kingsley Moghalu will make an excellent president actually vote for him.
Do these people vote?
That's the question. That's the question. I mean, if you have a PVC and you actually decide to vote, if you're a member of the middle class, for example, and on the day of voting, you actually come out and vote instead of boarding a plane to London and crowding the airport lounges at Heathrow Airport to watch the results from London or the US, then you're not serious. But if you say, enough is enough, it's time for us to have a competent leadership, I will stay and add my one vote. Hundreds of thousands and millions of that my one vote can produce a president different from the APC or the PDP. And so that's why I talk about courage. I had had the courage to run. It's risky to run for presidency in this country, especially when you're a serious candidate like I am, and you're affecting the public the way I am. So you're risking life and limb. So if people then think that you are good enough to be president, then they should have the courage of voting along the lines of their conviction. That's what I'm saying. And if they all do, you might be surprised at the outcome. Because I know what happened in the United States in 2016. We all thought we were walking to the coronation of Hillary Clinton as president. People went to bed and woke up and Trump was the president. It was a shock. It's one of the biggest shocks I've seen personally in my life, politically. Emmanuel Macron, the same thing. Even Barack Obama, when he came out in America, many people felt a black man couldn't be a president, but he was not afflicted with doubt. The same way that I'm not afflicted by doubts. I'm moving ahead, consistent, pushing ahead. And we're seeing results already. And we will be consistent. We will not rest on our oars until we get to the ballot box. And hopefully a lot of citizens, even many of them at the last minute, will turn and say, that's the man. We're putting our thumbprint for him.
Thank you, Professor Moghalu.
You're welcome.
We'll be going on a quick break on Politico Politica, but when the show returns, it's straight into our Project Nigeria segment. It promises to be a very interesting and engaging discussion. Stay with us.